Hello everyone, Hunter here, and welcome to Fallout 4. This is my uh, guide to show you how to prepare properly uh, your camp when in Fallout 76. Like, as you can tell, this is obviously not Fallout 76, this is Fallout 4. That's because it has yet to come out. So, my ideal camp is essentially this. Reason I have all these open windows is because I can look out and shoot. This allows me to have obviously some more protection, with also the added benefit of me being able essentially just to crouch and have some obvious protections such as these wood planks right here. Another good idea would be to have, since I built that obviously on a hill, this would be my house. Walk into here. It's very simplistic. This is typically how I set up everything. I would always have medicines on top, clothing, weapons, and this is obviously modded, so that's why I have all these perception bobbleheads. And that's also why when you come up here, I have all these turrets. The reason you would want all these the reason you want to have it at least be a 4x4 is mainly because anything bigger, that would take too long to repair. Since it's a 4x4, it'd be easier, obviously. Now, you don't have to have electricity. You could set it up so that way you would have fire pits. You know, stuff like that. I don't think that would be in this, but actually maybe fire pits would be in this, so maybe not, I don't know. But essentially, the reason you'd want... Okay. So the reason you'd obviously want it to be a small house is to keep it well protected. Obviously, I'm not sure if any or all of this stuff will even be in Fallout 76, such as these little planter things. But what I do know is, for a fact, that we'll obviously still have electricity. I'm not sure if it'd be via that or anything. But obviously, you'd want to have a decent area around your house protected. You don't want it to be too unfortified, because when monsters show up, which inevitably they would, due to the fact that in Fallout 76, your house is completely destructible. A monster could come in and destroy it. Destroy everything. So, what you would want to do is obviously... I mean, I'm pretty sure you won't be able to have these many turrets, but you know what I'm getting at. Have enough turrets at certain angles to help protect your entire base. Obviously, I don't expect you to have a perfect 100 for defense. And again, I'm pretty sure this equals up to more than 100, but regardless of the fact, I don't expect you to have that, okay? All these turrets, it's obviously overkill. But in Fallout 76, you gotta deal with stuff like Scorch Beasts. In Fallout 4, your base is not destructible unless it's by you in the workbench. So obviously, you're a lot safer in here when something big comes attacking than anywhere else. Unlike in Fallout 76, where you just get destroyed, even in your base. That's why you also want to have these in case of raids from other players, because obviously, if you start showing that, hey, you do have a lot of stuff, players would obviously come and start trying to raid. So to protect yourself, obviously, have these turrets set up. Don't mind that, I just built that because I was bored. So, obviously you need some form of electricity. I chose to go with wind. More than enough, honestly. But I felt like that this would be good enough. That's 6 energy that's used to power all my lights and a television. And that's it. I don't have any laser weapons or energy-based turrets up here. Mainly because at the time I built this, I wasn't at the right level. Now I am. But obviously this would be how it would look. Well, get rid of a lot of these and replace it with some energy-based turrets. You definitely face a lot better then, due to the fact that people, depending on when they raid, you would either have a low energy resistance or a high energy resistance. So I would suggest a mixture of both energy and kinetic turrets. In doing so, this would therefore allow the possibility of having one of these do more damage than the other, which would be beneficial. Of course, that's not saying if they come attacking in power armor, which you could, in fact, replace with... where is it? This. A missile turret. You could have it be set up to fire at any... Obviously, you could have it be set up to fire at anything. But this would obviously be better against much more armored targets. Of course, you could also use it against scorched beasts, but you also need to think how often will you be attacked by scorched beasts. Also, another thing you gotta worry about when building a camp is location. I adapted my house to fit in the location I set it in. Obviously, you'd have to do that everywhere. There's a reason why I put my water so far down. One, because having it logically, if you think from an actual survival situation, you'd want it to be closest to the water, and that point right there is closest to this. Do I think it's logical to have wells set up everywhere? This? No, because this entire area does not sit over a source of water, obviously, in a real-world situation. Just, you don't have to make it as logical as I'm thinking. I mean, you could have it be just a building. But obviously you want to be safe and prepared in case of certain situations. You know? That's why in Fallout 76 I'd actually suggest moving your house every now and again. Picking up the camp and going to a separate location. If they had it in this game, I would move it from here. Let me think. I would probably move my base camp from here all the way, I would say, to about here. Of course, you'd have to make sure that there's no buildings. Or heck, I'd even move it up to like here or something, you know? Reason being, when it comes down to it, you could either, A, be surrounded by high-level monsters, but in doing so, that would, yes, prevent other players from easily being able to take on your base, but also make it more difficult to live there due to the fact that higher-level monsters would attack your base, and if you're not prepared, you'll die. When looking at the map for Fallout 76, you would want to determine between the certain areas that have been separate. For instance, the main area where Vault 76 is referred to as the forest, while right next to it right next to it are the 3 areas referred to as the Toxic Valley, the Ash Heap, and the Savage Divide. You could set it up in either the Toxic Valley or the Savage Divide, but you would have to adapt to living in those areas. For instance, you would most likely require the ability to wear a gas mask to prevent any airborne bacteria, while also having to change how your house would be set up. For instance, I would not suggest having these because in Fallout, I'm pretty sure that these would obviously be weaker than, let's say, this, you know? Doesn't mean it's not as good, it's just not as strong. Because before you know it, a monster just walks in here, destroys everything, and leaves you with nothing before you even know it. And then you gotta fight that monster to get it away from your house. So, instead of setting it up there, you could either set it up on the opposite side of the Savage Divide, which would have, hold on a second. You'd either have the Mire or Cranberry Bog. Both areas, still pretty good. But, you'd obviously need to change, because Cranberry Bog is typically a very, water-saturated land. But of course, you could end up still just living in the forest, going to random locations every now and again. Another thing you gotta worry about is, if you can plant crops, where do you want to have it be set up? See, I have it set up like this. So that way I could easily just walk around collecting all the crops I would need. But of course, the issue is in Fallout 76, I don't know if this type of thing will be around. Hold on a second. The garden plot. I don't know if they'll be around in this or not. And if so, well then, you could have it be set up kind of like this to prepare. Now, another thing that you would have to worry about is the type of bed. Since I'm in a modded situation, I have a lot more resources. But when it comes down to the bed quality, you would either have to choose from this or a sleeping bag. A sleeping bag takes up a lot less space, unlike this. Of course, depending on where you have your base set up, it wouldn't really matter, honestly. Unless, you know, they implement a sleeping function where if you sleep in a bad bed, you don't get as good night's sleep and you don't receive as much energy, in comparison to a better bed, which you'd get better night's sleep. Now, another thing that you'd have to worry about is the cost of all these pieces. So, the average cost for a turret would be about $8 steel, 1 circuitry, 2 gears, and 2 oil. Now, if you're going to set up in 4 corners, that would be 32 steel, 4 circuitry, 8 gears, and 8 oil altogether. Now, that is just for the basic level turrets. The basic machine gun turrets. That's it. Of course, if you're going to go for laser, that would require 5 aluminum, 3 circuitry, 3 screw, 4 fiber optics, 2 gear, 2 nuclear material, 5 steel, and 5 glass. Of course, if you manage to get all this stuff in a relatively short amount of time, you would probably not have that big of an issue along the lines, you know? Of course, if you want to protect against power armor, you'd have to get obviously this, because this would have much more explosive damage. This would give you, to get at least one of these, you need 6 aluminum, 6 circuitry, 5 screw, 5 gear, 6 oil, and 6 steel. Obviously, you're not going to have, and you probably won't have enough to make this. With all of these, and then these, and then everything else. So, you should be willing to be as minimalistic as possible while also not being afraid to go with the more expensive stuff. This wall would cost a person just about... I went the last one. Well, one of the last ones. This one. 9 steel, 4 wood. Very cheap. Of course, you could go with others, but the reason I went with this is for the obvious reasons for shooting out. This, 3 wood, 4 steel. Very cheap. Of course, the issues you'd have to worry about along the lines of... You'd also need to lock your door. That's a very big thing that you need to make sure of. Have the strongest lock always be on the inside. Always. And always remember to also have at least just as similar of a strong lock on the outside. Reason you want it on the inside is because this is typically where you'd be keeping your stuff. Of course, there will be obvious differences, like for instance, there will be some windows. You can also lock your windows. That's if you put windows. I mean, you could go like this and not have a single window. Then again, you can see outside. So I'm pretty sure that doesn't really matter, you know. And depending on what DLC things that we have, we could have, for instance, the DLC that allows you to make ammunition. I'm not sure if we'll have that, or that's specifically set up for specific open workbenches. It could be set up for specific open workbenches, or you could in fact do that, which would therefore allow you to create the ammunition for your guns. Now another thing you gotta make sure is, you gotta keep it close, because as this thing makes ammunition, anyone could come up and take it. That's it. That, of course, would be a little bit of an issue due to the fact that this guy just took my ammo. How am I going to defend myself, etc., etc. And I'm pretty sure we may not have that. We may not have the ability to create ammo and stuff like that, because that would obviously be a bit too overpowered, because this one would allow people to make guns easy. They would just have to they'd just need to sit down, camp, and set it up so that they'd be able to make guns. And obviously you would want to avoid that due to the fact that, hey, if people could do this, then a person could essentially own a monopoly in the game and control just how much of a certain gun there is. You may be thinking, that's not really possible, but it is when, if you do not have this, then you can't make it. And since you can't make it, then there would always be a constant amount, not constant amount, a randomized amount, because it would constantly be getting new types of guns. From every person would be getting new types of guns, etc., etc. But you'd be able to increase that amount by having something like this, which is a heavy weapon forge. You could make heavy weaponry then. And with the food processor, I'm pretty sure at that point you'd be really good. Because now you'd be able to start making food and other stuff that you need. Of course, you'd also need to remember, in Fallout 76, people can attack you, or they can join you. Don't be afraid to let people join in your group, because that would be a very big help for you in the long run. Because when it comes down to it, you're going to need the help trying to take down some of the bigger bosses, such as the Scorched Beast, the Mothman, the Flatwoods Monster, stuff like that. It will obviously not be easy to do it with a group, but it will also be even more difficult to do it by yourself. Therefore, I would suggest allowing people to join your group. Now, if you're someone like me, you'd be playing by yourself. So, for obvious safety reasons, always move your camp. It'll cost you, but every time someone finds your camp, move it. Because that person could, logically, then find out, hey, this person has a camp here. I'll know where they are. I know where their camp is. I could come back with a group of friends and tear it down. Try and loot it. So, it'd always be safe to make sure to move your camp as frequently as possible. And that is my guide for how to build a base and how to protect it in Fallout 76. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I didn't, because I couldn't really, stay on topic that very well. And it's weird having to do it in Fallout 4, even though Fallout 76 is coming out in a few days. I know I'll be on it, and I'll obviously post a video on it once I get it and manage to get it downloaded. So, if you guys want to, like, comment, subscribe down. There are links to my Patreon down in the description. If you want, you don't have to. But otherwise, I hope you had a nice day, and I'm out.